think that's the problem. This one doesn't show like other ones say, nearby homes, rentals, and all that stuff.
You just hit search.
It does. It's all in there.
I know, but the other one, it would.
You had broke it out into different sections. So.
I don't even know how to log on. Look at all that stuff.
All right, guys.
Oh,
Good
you do
morning
your,
or afternoon, I suppose.
Afternoon.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about making an offer, putting together a contract, and this is both applicable when you are making an offer or looking at an offer that somebody sent you to make sure that they put together the offer right.
Okay.
Because you're gonna get offers from other agents where they made a bunch of mistakes on the contract, and if you or your client just signs it, guess what? You don't have a valid contract. Okay? So that's okay. We're glad to have you in here. So that is the CE class. Whoop, you
Yeah,
all
we
caught?
didn't know until they started handing out. Oh my
Yes,
God,
sir.
where am I getting all this?
I thought y'all had done that one with me before.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't done that.
I wouldn't do it. I just wasn't.
So I want us to imagine for a minute, and I want to walk you through the scenario. You were out showing houses today with your buyer, and you found the one, and they want to put in an offer on that house. Okay? Before we ever get to the contract, there's some things that we need to do. There's some conversations we need to have. There's some things we need to figure out. Right? Okay? Because number one, let's say the house is listed for $200,000. Okay? Your client wants to make an offer. That's awesome. What's the right offer?
That's a problem.
How do you know?
You have to look at other things that are in the
You have to
area.
go look at other comps. So even when we leave that appointment, we're not ready to write the offer. We're gonna have to, even if the client says, let's put in an all cash offer, full price. Well, I'm their fiduciary. I'm supposed to be looking out for their best interest. So before we put in an offer, I wanna go do my due diligence. Now, does it make sense for me to do my due diligence before we go look at the house? No. Because typically, how long does it take you to pull comps on a property?
Well, it depends on if you're experienced or you're not.
And given where you are right now,
It's
gonna
gonna
take
take
a
a
while.
while.
it's gonna take you a while. It's gonna take you 30 minutes or an hour. Well, what if me and Lisa are going out today to go look at 6 houses?
You're not gonna run on all of those.
I'm not running comps on all of them. I wanna find the house first and then do my work, okay? So we're getting ready to do my purchase and sale agreement. What are some of the things I'm gonna wanna do? Well, one of them is gonna be pull comps, because I need to know what's the value of the house. Then we can decide if the house is worth $200,000. Do we wanna try and get it for $195,000? Do we wanna push it because we know there's gonna be a lot of competition for that house because it's in Parkview, and we know there's gonna be multiple offers? The agent's already told us there are multiple offers. We can decide what our pricing strategy is, but the first thing that I need to know is what the value of the property is, okay? Second thing we wanna do is we wanna gather all the information we can on the property, because there are some documents that will be part of our contract that we probably don't have, okay? And that's gonna be our seller's property disclosure, our community association disclosure, our lead-based paint disclosure, and our DeKalb County water disclosure, if they're applicable. If it's not in unincorporated DeKalb County, I don't need the last one. If it's not built before 1978, I don't need the lead-based paint. If it's not in an HOA community, I don't need the community association disclosure. But I always want, may not always get, I always want the seller's property disclosure. So how do I get those?
Call or email the agent.
Call or email the agent. It's one option,
Save down.
unless they've uploaded them into the listing. So I'll always go check the listing first, see if it's there.
And sometimes they're at the house.
And sometimes they left them behind the house for you to take a copy. So let's go back to our scenario. We're just leaving the house. The client says, this is it, want to make an offer. Great. I'm gonna go back to my office, do a little bit of research, gather all the information we need to put our offer together. I'll give you a call in an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever that timeline looks like for us to do that. In the meantime, I'm gonna call the listing agent and let them know we'll be submitting an offer today. Okay? As soon as I get in my car and I pull away from that house, I'm calling the listing agent. I want them to know, because they may have another offer sitting on their table that they are sitting there ready to sign it, and I wanna put that to a stop. If I wait 4 hours and send the offer over, I may have lost my opportunity. They're in a binding contract at that point. Does that make sense? During that phone call, I will ask them, is the seller's property disclosure and the community association disclosure already uploaded in MLS, or can you go ahead and email it to me so I have it for my offer? Okay? That puts me ready to have a conversation with my client, okay? And what I recommend you do, especially when you're first starting, 90% of your contract is right there on the first page, okay? Print one out and go through and highlight all the stuff that you need to know from your client, so that when you have a conversation with them about what their offer looked like, you don't forget one of the pieces and have to call them back 30 minutes later and say, oh, I forgot to ask you about this. And then 15 minutes later, it's, oh, one more thing. Does that make sense? I don't look like a pro and get everything from them. So what are some of the things that I'm gonna need to know from my client in order to put together my contract? Well,
When they're gonna close,
yeah, certainly when they want to close. Okay, what are some of the ones that are less obvious? What they want to offer, what they are asking in seller's property, in seller's contributions to closing. You know, we know those. Okay, and we're going to talk more of those about in a second. But some of the ones that are less obvious is, do they have a preference for the closing attorney?
So we don't say we use billings when it's up to the buyer.
That's considered steering. We can give them multiple options. We can make recommendations, but we want to make it clear to them that they can choose whoever they want to. Okay, but we've got great relationships with people. Did you want me to send you a couple of ideas? Do you want me to tell you a couple of ideas? You know, I
So we
actually have
can make
one in my office.
recommendations
We make
without
recommendations.
steering.
Yeah, but if you give them one option and that's the only option, then that's considered steering. Okay? We want to give them a variety of options and remind them that if they've got a relationship with someone, they can do that on their own. They can use that. Okay? Some of the other things that are less obvious in here are, is there a difference between closing and possession? That's usually not going to matter to your buyer. They're gonna wanna take possession as soon as they buy it, but you may wanna ask them if there's flexibility there, okay, to be prepared for the counteroffer, okay, because sometimes the seller's gonna wanna stay in the house a couple of days. I like to prepare them that may be something that we hear back from, okay? Conversation around earnest money. When can we get it, and how much should it be? Those are less obvious. Okay.
question,
yeah.
about the, closing and possession. I mean, if somebody is staying in the house like 2 more days, are they gonna owe the buyer money? Or is that just kind of their standard?
Whatever the
time?
contract says.
Okay,
Typically, no.
okay,
I'm offering this, we're agreeing to this. This is closing date, this is possession date. Now, if it's 30 days,
Right, yeah.
60 days, anything more than 60 days, you can't use a temporary occupancy agreement for it. There actually has to be a lease in place.
okay,
And the lender's gonna have an issue if it's more than 60 days.
okay.
But if it's 2-3 days, no.
Usually that's kind of a part, okay.
But there's a huge punitive cost that you're gonna wanna put into your temporary occupancy agreement, okay? And and we probably won't have time to get to that today, but if you do find yourself in a situation that you need a temporary occupancy agreement, come see me, have a conversation before we fill that out.
Okay.
Okay, so these are some of the things that are less obvious. The ones that are even obvious, okay, we don't necessarily have all the information we need to have the right discussion. Do you have a pre-qualification letter? Okay, hopefully you already got that before you went out and showing properties. However, have the lender re-qualify them for that property. Okay? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. And estimate closing cost.
You're saying the lenders do all that, right?
Yes. So after I've called the agent, my next phone call is gonna be the lender and say, hey, John and Jane Smith just found a home that they wanna put an offer in on. The address of the property is 123 Main Street, Loganville. Can you run the numbers on that, make sure they're still pre-qualified, and let me know what you estimate the closing costs are gonna be if we make an offer of $200,000, okay?
Now, prior to this, do you give them an option, just like with the attorney, do you say, I have several lenders, or what lender would you like to use?
Well, at this point, we're already out visiting houses. I'm not visiting houses if you're not pre-qualified, so I'm not having that conversation at this point. That's a conversation I had back at the buyer's consultation. Okay, and yes, at that point, I am giving them multiple options.
So your first,
Keller
Quote, first
Mortgage,
meeting.
Supreme Lending, and then I have a third one, but you guys all have Keller Mortgage and Supreme Lending too. But have a third one. Okay. And actually I've got 3 others, that I can fill in. But the reason you wanna have them re-qualified, okay? When they did the pre-qual letter, the lender, they had to guess at some stuff. They had to guess what the HOA fees were gonna be, and they had to guess what the taxes were gonna be. Well, now that we know a specific property, we know exactly what the HOA fees are and exactly what the taxes are. Well, what if the lender had estimated taxes were gonna be $1,700 a year, but they picked a property that the taxes are $4,400 a year? Okay, makes a huge difference in what they pre-qualify. Their budget now is $200 less a month if they qualify for it. And the cash that they need at closing just jumped significantly because they're gonna have to escrow 3 months of taxes, okay? So both their cash needed for closing and what they qualify for just changed, okay?
The earnest money doesn't change, does it?
Earnest money doesn't necessarily change, yeah. And we'll talk about that here in a second. And then getting this estimate of closing costs, this is really important. I just had an agent that had their deal fall apart because when they put in the offer, they were like, you know, here's what normally we ask the seller for closing costs. If you wanna be more competitive, less. If you wanna be more competitive, let's make it more. So they asked for $3,000. Well, the client did not understand that their closing costs were gonna be about $12,000. So seller's gonna pay for 3 of it. They still had to bring $9,000 plus their down payment. That took that property out of their budget, okay? So when I go to structure my deal, I need to be able to have a conversation ahead of time. Hey, I talked with your lender, he's estimating these are what your closing costs are, gonna be at the closing table, in addition to your down payment money. So your cash to close is gonna be this amount. It's very common in Georgia for the sellers to help the buyer, okay? This is what's normal. What would you like us to ask for? Okay, less it is, more competitive, more it is, less competitive the offer is.
What is the accepted norm like for the seller? Like kinda what would you ask?
So in a moderate priced home, so in that $180,000 to $250,000, historically 3% has been around what sellers would pay.
Okay.
As you move down in price though, the percentage can go up, okay?
Okay.
And as you go up, the percentage drops dramatically.
Okay.
Because if I'm buying an $800,000 home, what do you assume about me? I have money to buy a home. Do I need help at the closing table? I shouldn't. I've got cash. I'm buying a $140,000 home. What can you assume about my cash
You
position?
can only afford
I don't-
140,000.
Things are pretty tight. I may need more help. And depending on the type of loan that you're getting, there's gonna be a cap on how much the seller can contribute. So with an FHA loan, they can contribute up to 6%. On most conventional loans, 3% is the cap, okay? So, but I'm buying an $800,000 home, do I wanna ask for $24,000 in seller's contributions to closing? No, the closing costs are probably gonna be 14, 15,000. If I ask for 24 and they're only 14, guess what happens to that other $10,000? The seller gets to keep it. On your contract where it says seller's contributions to closing, that is an up to number. The seller will contribute up to $24,000, okay? Well, if there were only 14, they only had to pay 14. So you'd have been better off to negotiate a $10,000 lower sales price and a $10,000 lower contribution to closing, and then your client would have been the winner in that situation. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and we can kind of do that again here in a minute. But I need to know what to tell them, because I can't remember, your job is to do everybody's job, okay? Or at least to make sure everybody did their job. I don't know that the lender had the conversation they needed to around what the closing costs were gonna be. I need to make sure that conversation took place, so they know what to expect going in, so the deals don't fall apart. Okay? So, now having done this, now I'm ready to sit down and start writing the contract. And I will start the contract without my client's input, okay? Because there's some things in here that I don't need their help with. We're putting in the offer when? Today. I don't need my client's help for that, right? I know what today's date is. The property address. So, address, city, county, and zip code. Don't need their help with any of that.
Quick question, because I didn't do this with my buyer. You can do all of this online, that's what I'm trying to do. Send it to them, they can sign it.
They can digitally sign it.
I'm really pulling up the document that you can.
I pulled this up in Transaction Desk.
Okay.
You also have the option to do it in RDocs.
Okay.
And we have been told 2 weeks ago that tomorrow we're gonna have access to our documents through DocuSign. I haven't heard anything more, there's been no reports, but just know that our access to our documents through DocuSign, which is our preferred way to do it, because how it's typed to command, is imminent. So don't investigate a lot of time becoming an expert on Transaction Desk or RDocs. Get through the transaction right now. Once we have our documents in DocuSign, become a DocuSign expert, okay?
Oh, so I didn't so that's gonna replace Transaction Desk?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Okay, I thought it was gonna be a problem.
Nope, no need to do Transaction
So
Desk. or
I thought
DocuSign.
Transaction Desk would use DocuSign to sign documents, I don't know what I thought,
No.
but okay.
Transaction Desk has its own signing
Gotcha,
function,
okay.
RDocs has its own signing function, DocuSign will be our signing function
Okay.
So
in the
that's
future.
coming soon.
Very soon.
There's a class on it in March, so hopefully.
Yeah, we've got a couple of classes on it for March,
Okay.
set up in anticipation that they told us correctly, okay? So now the brokers don't want us to put the MLS number or the tax parcel ID number in here. And the reason is, we already have the legal description and the address, okay? These are all different ways of identifying the same property. And for a contract, which one is controlling?
The legal description.
The legal description, okay? So you could really write a contract without putting the address in, but we want the attorney that's pulling title, we want all the parties that are pulling title. Nobody knows deed book and page number, but they know 119 Oak Street, you know, everybody can relate to that. So that makes sure that we're all talking about the same property. But if I make a typo in the MLS number and a typo in the tax parcel ID number, well, now I've potentially got 4 different addresses in here, 4 different properties, which one are we talking about? So we wanna keep just 2. Legal description. Do I need my client to put the legal description in there? No, they don't know the legal description. I have a couple of options. Option 1 is always the best option. It's not gonna be the option you use the most, okay? What that means is that we are getting a copy of the deed, okay? So if the seller has provided a copy of the deed, we can use it. We can go up and visit our attorney friends and ask them to print a copy of the deed. If you subscribe to gsccca.org, you can go in and download your own copies of the deed and use that as your attachment to your contract, as this is how we're identifying the property, okay? That is the most precise, definitive way to do it. But running in a very, very close second is deed book and page, okay? If you guys are tempted to use anything besides those 2, call and have a conversation with me first. Because this is very simple. Deed book and page, look into the tax suite, either Realist or CRS tax suite, go to the last sale that took place, and it'll list the deed book and page in there. That's perfect, that's all you need. You can actually choose any one of the previous sales and use the deed book and page, because all it is a way to identify that property. If Lisa sold the property to Deb, and Deb sold the property to Terrence, and Terrence sold it to Kim, it doesn't matter which transaction I look at, we're talking about the same piece of property, right? Okay, that's the reason it doesn't matter which deed book and page we use, as long as it's for a transaction for that property. When you go down to option number 4, which lots of agents are tempted to do, in order for this to be considered a legal definition, it has got to have a lot number, it has to have a subdivision name, has to have the plat book, the plat page, and the tax district. So I gotta have 5 pieces of information in there for it to accurately reflect where the property is. Because I need to know which city hall to go to, right, which county. I need to know which plat book to pick up. I have to be able to open up to that page. I've got to identify the neighborhood on that map, and then the lot in that neighborhood, in order for us to be assured we're talking about the same property. If I'm missing any one of those pieces of information, we don't know which property it is. Does that make sense? Doesn't that sound way too complicated to use option 4? I feel the same way. So don't need them for that. So as I work my way down now, and one of the things I encourage you guys to do, get into a habit as you're writing your contracts and you're going back to double check your contracts before sending them to me to review. Go through the page and count it off. Section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, 5, 6, because these spots over here on the far right and the really skinny one, you will overlook. But if you count it all the way down, you'll never miss a section, okay? So as I move from section 1 to 2, purchase the price of the property, I'm gonna need to have a conversation with my client. Same thing with the seller's contributions to closing. And the thing I want you to get used to here, there's 2 different phrases that a lot of agents use interchangeably. One is seller's contributions to closing, and the other one is closing costs, okay? We made an offer for $200,000 with $5,000 in closing costs. No, we made an offer of $200,000 with $5,000 in seller's contributions to closing costs. That $5,000 isn't all the closing costs, it's just what the seller's paying toward the buyer's closing costs. Does that make
Right.
sense
I
there, Ray?
was gonna say,
So-
if you have that information from the lender for that property, then for your buyer, you know your closing costs are only 10,000, we'd like the seller to contribute 5,000.
Maybe, or if we really
But this
want that property, that's the house. I don't wanna lose it, what do we need to do to make this offer as strong as possible? How many still put zero here? They're okay with spending the 10,000 at the closing table because that's how bad they want it. The other scenario may be, I only have enough money for my down payment, I don't have money for the closing costs. So if it's 10, I need 10, okay? As long as that works under the 3% or 6% for that particular loan type, okay? But yeah,
But if you have
this
that,
frames that
then you have
conversation.
something to work with.
And they know what to expect, what they're making a decision on. Well, we want the seller to pay 3,000, well, 3,000 of what? You know, the big difference between 3,000 and 5,000 and 3,000 and 14,000, right? I don't know about you guys, but $5,000 or $6,000 is still a lot of money. Okay. All right, as we work our way down, closing date and possession. Closing date shall be, this cannot be, nothing on the contract can be to be determined, okay? And you will see agents put TBD, okay? The other thing that it can't be, that you'll see old agents put on here, is they will put shall be on or before March 24th, okay? Well, there were tons of lawsuits around that, because the buyer wants to close on the 20th, and the seller wants to close on the 24th. Well, which one of them is right? They both were, okay? Who gets to win? You know, when the closing date is March 24th, there's no argument. That's when the closing date is. There's not, well, I want this and I want this. No, the contract says it's 24th. It's the 24th, okay? Make sure we mark when the closing is going to be, or the date of possession is gonna be. Are they gonna take possession at closing, or 3 days after closing at 5:00 p.m.? Okay, if the seller is going to stay in the property after closing, we're also gonna need a temporary occupancy agreement.
Only if it's more than 50 days or in
No,
general period.
if they're gonna stay 5 minutes after closing, if they're leaving a refrigerator in the garage to be picked up at a later date, you need a temporary occupancy agreement, okay? And we can talk through that if that scenario ever comes up for you. The easiest, cleanest thing to do is at closing, all your stuff is out, and here's the keys. That's the cleanest way to do a transaction. Avoid everything else if you can. Holder of the earnest money. Who can hold the earnest money?
Well,
Which
really,
one?
whoever you agree on.
We're
The,
around, but there's really only 3 that we need to think about.
The attorney.
sellers,
The attorney, our broker, or their broker. That's it. I don't want you guys to think anything outside of that. That's our broker, their broker, or the attorney. Who would we prefer to hold it?
our broker.
We like to hold it, okay? If it's under $5,000. Because if there ever is an argument over the earnest money, we know how our broker thinks. We know they're gonna respect the contract. And if anything is ever subject to interpretation, you know, he's probably gonna err on the side of our client, okay? But do I mind if another broker holds the money? No. Because they are still obligated to follow the contract.
Okay.
And if I've written a really good contract where it's not open to interpretation, it's either gonna be the seller's clearly in the right or clearly in the wrong. Buyer gets their money, buyer doesn't get their money.
So we would write there, Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners.
Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners, and it has to be spelled out. Cannot abbreviate Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners. If Greg ever audits your contracts for any reason, every place that you've abbreviated your broker's name is $150 fine. So, don't want you guys paying those fines. If it's going to be the closing attorney, there are 2 other documents that you have to have. okay? That's F510 and F511. F510 being, the closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money, okay? And that's where the buyer and the seller agree that the attorney's gonna hold the money. But if that's all we did, who's missing from the conversation? The attorney. He hasn't agreed to hold the earnest money. So F511 is signed by the attorney where he's agreeing to hold the earnest money and is agreeing to comply with the terms of the contract. Okay?
So if it's Keller Williams, that goes in box 5 and nothing goes in 6?
No, 6 is separate. We're just talking about 5 right now. This is who's closing, doing the closing over here. In 5, who's holding the earnest money? So holding the earnest money, it's either gonna be Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners, the other broker, or the closing attorney.
And that'll go in that box.
And that'll go in that box right there. And if it's the closing attorney, we've gotta have the 510 and the 511. Buyer and seller sign this one, the attorney signs this one.
So if it's one of the attorneys, what are you gonna put in there? F510 and then the name or something, or?
No. F510 is a completely separate document.
Right, but I'm saying, are you gonna type it in there, or what do you put in there if it's an attorney?
O'Kelly and Sorahan, Snellville,
Oh,
okay? Because with O'Kelly and Sorahan, they've got 18 locations. I
oh,
wanna specify which location is holding it, which location are we closing it in. So, same thing here, O'Kelly and Sorahan, Snellville, Luter, Larkin, and I forget what the last name was. But Luter and Larkin, we're going that. Luter and Larkin, Loganville, okay? Gannick, Minsk, Buckhead, okay? Give both the title and, title of the attorney's office and what the contract is. And one of the nice things that they did this year, it's okay, I still like putting the firm's name there, but if you put an attorney's name here, it's now protected in the back of the contract that by putting the attorney's name, it's implied that you're hiring a brokerage, okay? So you can't have an attorney's name in there, not just a firm name. But I personally like the firm name. Yeah, that's what I've always done. All right, down to earnest money, okay? A couple of neat things we need to know about here. Number 1, earnest money shall be paid by check, cash, or wire transfer. I wish they would take cash off the contract, because I don't know anybody that takes cash for earnest money. So then we're down to check or wire transfer. Well, our office doesn't do wire transfers, okay? So if you're paying it to our office, if we're the holder of the earnest money, this is always gonna be check, okay? If it is the closing attorney, guess what the closing attorney doesn't take? Checks. So, closing attorney, it's always gonna be a wire transfer. If we're the ones that are holding it, it's always gonna be check. Don't forget the check boxes, okay? It's not part of the contract if the box isn't checked. Down here, again, we have to select which one of these. It doesn't matter that it's filled in here. If it's not selected here, that's not part of the contract. Because the contract says, well, you'll see it in other places, but if the checkbox not marked, it's not relevant to the contract. So, $2,000 as of the offer date. What does that mean?
You should have that $2,000 check with your offer.
Okay, but I'm sending the offer right now. Right? I'm writing the offer to send right now. So what does that mean?
That means you're gonna have to get the check before if you want to have it.
No, it means I already have it. If you don't already have the check in your hands, don't mark A, okay? Because it's not, well, I'm going to pick it up at 6 o'clock tonight. Well, what if your client doesn't have it at 6 o'clock tonight? What if you have a flat tire and you don't get there at 6 o'clock tonight? You've signed a contract that said you have the check. So until you have that check, don't say, I have the check.
Which is the most common way, A or B.
B. So that'll be $2,000 within 3 days of binding agreement date, okay? But where 3 comes in, give you a great example, just used it yesterday with one of the people in the coaching program. $2,000 within 3 days of bank approval of short sale, okay? So we're submitting an offer, it's gotta be put in front of the bank's gotta sign off and say, we approve this sale. We don't know if that's gonna be a week, 2 weeks, 30 days, 60 days. They don't wanna put the earnest money up. We don't want them to put the earnest money up until we know the bank's gonna accept the offer. And as soon as the bank says, good, we'll take that price, then we'll submit the offer. So this could also be $2,000 today, $1,000 in a week. I mean, we can do any number of things that are in there. But if you're doing anything unique with the earnest money, option day would be the place to go.
What if they're not giving you money, what if they're giving you an item?
Don't take it.
Then you're at the wrong broker.
An antique clock.
Antique clock.
I know.
About the test. I'm
Yes,
like,
it
yeah,
was on
that's
the
not like,
test.
I don't
I
have my
was
Rolex, you know?
No, because
Tell them to go down to the pawn shop and get
Yes,
themselves some
get
cash.
the cash, yeah.
that's exactly right. All right, so inspection and due diligence, property being sold to a due diligence period of blank days. So what's normal in there?
10 days.
10 days, 7 days, or 10 days are the two figures today that we see more often than anything else, okay? But if your buyer, you're on the listing side, is one of those large companies, Zillow or Invitation Homes, somebody like that, a large investor, they've got a system and a process they have to run through. They're very likely gonna ask for 14 days. And I've seen a few ask for 21, but we've been able to counter those with 14. So I wouldn't accept anything under 14 or over 14 unless it's a special stipulation, a special situation. I may want a longer due diligence period if I'm needing to find out, can I get the property rezoned? If I'm needing to get the county out to do a PERC test, and I need to get the EPA involved to come do some inspections, I may need longer to get that done. Okay. Does that make sense? But those are really unique. You will see longer ones on when you're buying lots or land, because I've got to get my builder out there. I've got to get, potentially a surveyor, find out where can we put the house, and those things can take a little bit longer processes. But usually in those cases, you're not gonna see anything over 30 days. In commercial environments, you potentially will have much longer ones, but in that case, you are likely gonna have an option, okay? Our broker does not like options. So I want you guys just to put a big X through the option payment for due diligence on yours so that you don't ever use it. But I want you to understand what it is. It's a bribe. Okay? Yeah. So, and you're selling your house. Okay? So, what I'm willing to do, I really want your house. So, I'm going to give you $500, and in exchange, you're going to give me 7 days to inspect the property and decide if I want to go forward or not.
But not the same as your due diligence?
No. My due diligence, I'm giving $500 to the attorney, and I've got 7 days to decide if I want to go forward or not. And if I decide not to, I get my money back. I'm giving you $500 so that you will allow me 7 days. You keep it, whether I terminate or not. It's a bribe. I want you to take my offer because it's going to put $500 in your pocket today.
Over somebody else.
Over somebody else. Okay? In really, really competitive environments, and it wouldn't surprise me in the next year if we didn't see this pop up, if we get really, really crazy low on inventory. But you're giving somebody money not knowing, are you going to be happy with the inspection? You don't know if the appraisal is going to come back the way that it should. Once you let go of that option money, it's gone. Okay? But it can move you to the head of the list. So there may be occasions where you need to use it or want to use it, but talk to somebody with more experience before you ever duties. Lead-based paint. Was the property built before 1978 or was it not built before 1978? If it was built before 1978, it tells you right here, you need a lead-based paint exhibit. You cannot have a binding contract without the lead-based paint exhibit if the property was built before 1978, okay? Or if anything in the property is pre-1978. So if you've got those vintage barn doors that are now on the tracks for your bedroom, if you've got the old restored mantle that was taken out of some 1900s home that you now have in your den, that's a pre-1978 fixture. You're gonna have to do a lead-based paint disclosure. Okay?
So why don't you just do one, yesterday Susan was just saying.
And you
just
can
do one every time.
do one every time. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? That certainly covers your bases.
I forgot to have my buyer sign it, the one I recently closed on, so compliance sent me a little email after that.
Yep. And the order, you have to understand, and I probably heard this yesterday, the potentially biggest expense you can have in your business, the biggest risk you take to your pocketbook is screwing up the lead-based paint exhibit. There are 12 places on that contract that you can make a mistake.
Wow.
Okay? And every one of those carries potentially a $15,000 fine. That means you don't fill out your lead-based paint exhibit right, you could be fined up to $180,000. And that is not covered by errors and omissions insurance. That's on you. Okay?
Where is that, on this contract or?
On the lead-based paint exhibit,
So you would attach it.
that form is the one that can get screwed up.
You would attach that form with this to be signed by them.
Yes. And we're gonna do that when we get to page 7. You'll see where we attach the exhibits. And then we can go through and look at the exhibits. So, brokerage relationship, this is another place that commonly gets screwed up, okay? You always are in one of two relationships with your client, okay? You as an agent, they're your client or they're your customer, okay? Who's your client? If you're on the selling side, you're the buyer's agent, what do you have that tells you that your person, a buyer's brokerage agreement, okay? What tells you you have a customer relationship? What do you have instead?
Seller.
It's a agreement to work with buyer as customer, okay? You're always going to have a brokerage document, okay?
Describe that, Rick, the buyer, customer.
Okay? In a client relationship, I'm acting as their fiduciary, okay? I have a obligation, a contractual obligation to look out for their best interest, okay? I'm gonna advise them, coach them, guide them through the process. A customer has a functionary relationship, okay? I'm going to help you accomplish what you want. I will help you fill out a contract. I will help you make an offer. I can provide you with information that you ask me for, but I can't give you advice. I can't coach you. I can't tell you this is a good decision or a bad decision, or I would do something different.
But you're
Okay.
still gonna get paid?
But I'm still
As a
gonna get paid.
customer.
So how do we,
Why would you do that?
yeah,
In
Well-
what situation would you have a customer that's not a client?
I'm listing a house, okay?
Right,
And I have listed the house, it's on the market, a buyer shows up at my open house, they don't have an agent, and they want to buy the property.
So you're,
I'm representing the seller as a client, can I represent the buyer as a client?
No.
No,
But you
that's-
can
that's
still
called-
represent them as a customer?
But I can represent them as a customer. That's dual agency if you're trying to represent two parties as a client.
So,
I can't represent this person's financial best interest and this person's financial best interest at the same time, because they're in conflict with each other. I can represent this person's financial best interest and help this person do what they need to move through the transaction, okay? I'm gonna have a conversation with them about what this looks like, okay? That I can't tell you this price is too high or too low, or I would structure the deal this way, I can't do that advice. But if you know what you wanna offer and you're comfortable working with me, I can help you get that on the contract. I can help you navigate getting your financing approved, get
So
everything lined up with
paperwork
the
and
attorney.
what have you.
Yeah, I become a transaction
But your
manager
loyalty is to your,
for
So
my
it's
loyalty
kinda like
to my client.
a four buy, I don't know.
For sale by owner.
But on
that's
the
the
other
flip
side
side.
of it,
Yeah,
okay,
And that's
okay.
what I was about to say. The other situation is you're working with a buyer and they've hired you as a client and the house that they wanna buy is a for sale by owner. Well, who's writing the contract? Who's doing the counter offer? That for sale by owner doesn't have access to the contract, doesn't know how to fill out the contract, doesn't
So
have
you
the
work for
relationship.
them as a
So I'm working for them as I'm working for them as them being my customer. That's our relationship, not a client relationship. The buyer's my client. I'm their fiduciary. I'm just a functionary for the for sale by owner.
Now, that would make sense, but not the other way.
Now, the other way,
So,
so if you have a customer agreement with them and they're buying.
Yeah.
You're the listing agent, they came to buy your house, so you're working with them. Would you, in that customer agreement, like come up with a commission or something?
well,
Is
if
that
I'm
what
on
you're
both
saying?
sides of the transaction, the listing
That's right, it's already
agreement
there.
said I'm getting paid 6%.
Even if you're a customer and
The
not,
person I'm sharing it with is me.
okay.
So instead of me giving 3% to somebody else, I'm giving 3%.
So
Yeah,
that's
so
why
I get it all.
you would not encourage them, like, to do a designated agent, like, to pull somebody else in, have a designated agent or something.
Well, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna encourage them to do that,
Okay,
okay? I'm just saying that's a situation where you could represent both sides. As part of the conversation, me personally, my ethics, my morality, everything, I wanna have a very frank and honest conversation with that potential customer and say, hey, listen, if I represent you, this is what it looks like. These are the restraints of what I can or can't do. If you're comfortable with that, great. I would love to work with you. If you need a fiduciary, if you want somebody that's coaching you and looking out for your best interest, I work with a lot of fantastic people. I'm happy to introduce you to 2 or 3 different agents, let you talk with them and see if there's one of those that you're more comfortable with than another for you to represent them. And then I'll refer it to one of my contacts and I'll take a referral fee on that. But at that point, I'm getting 3.75%. If I can get all 6, I like to get all 6, okay? But I wanna make absolutely certain they understand what they're getting into
Right.
and how I can help them and how I can't help them, okay? And then let them make the decision. That's what our job is, okay? In every situation that you're gonna find yourself in this job, you're not the decision maker, okay? Our job is to give our clients and our customers the information that they need for them to make intelligent decisions. That's the value that we bring to them. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? So in that same situation, when I'm potentially gonna have somebody as a customer, I just wanna give them all the information. Here's what a functionary does, here's what a fiduciary does, which one's a better fit for you? And they're like, we really like you, we're okay over here. Fantastic, sign right here. Okay. That makes sense, all right? All right, so, which brings us down to number,
but
okay,
the selling broker is representing the buyer,
correct.
that's what's
Okay.
confusing too there, is the
Well,
selling broker is
Who
the buyer.
sold the house? I listed it,
cancel
it's sitting out there. Am I the one that sells it?
No.
Or is the agent that brings their client by there, walks them through, shows them, convinces them that's the right house? Who sold the
That is
house?
confusing.
And I know that it is, but if you'll just look over
Right,
here,
listing broker.
listing is
Yeah.
really clear, right? So, I know this one for sure, this one has to be the opposite.
Doesn't,
Right.
it does make sense when you say who sold them the house.
Yeah.
Because you were the one that,
Like that you was a listing. So if
Well,
you're,
Well, his name
You
would be
could
on
be
both.
Well, I
both
mean,
if you're
you
a
can be
his
both.
customer.
But she was saying selling broker right here, that is confusing. Selling broker means that
The
you are
buyer's
the
agent.
buyer's agent. Listing broker is the seller's agent. Okay? Who sells the house? The buyer's agent or the listing agent?
Buyer.
Buyer's agent is who
I
sells the house.
think in terms
So,
of,
so that's the broker.
yeah, you
So,
showed them the house.
number 3, acting as dual agent. You're never gonna have to mark that. Keller Williams does not allow dual agency. So, number 4, where this comes in, and the only time you're gonna fill these 2 blocks in is if it's the same broker on both sides. Okay? If it's Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners on both sides.
So when it says selling broker is and listing broker is, we're not gonna put our agent, our name, we're gonna put Keller Williams.
Realty Atlanta Partners.
Okay.
You're gonna put Virtual Properties LLC, you're gonna put Coldwell Banker, blah, blah, blah. You're gonna put whatever in there, okay? Now, if it's Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners and Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners, the broker's not representing both as a client.
Right.
We are acting as designated agent where Trey Hunt has been assigned to exclusively represent the buyer, and Amy Anderson has been assigned to exclusively represent the seller. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? So we don't fill these boxes in unless number 4 is checked. And we only check number 4 if the broker is the same on both sides. And so if you've got Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners here and Keller Williams Chattahoochee North here, different brokers. Okay? Both Keller Williams, they're different brokers. So we can still both represent as a client. There's no designated agency.
it has to be the same office.
Not same office, same broker. Because Keller Williams Atlanta Partners has 12 offices. Okay? They're all under the same qualifying broker. So our Sugarloaf office, our Buford office, our South Forsyth office, our Tucker office, they all operate under one broker. So, designated agency.
So if it
Okay.
says Keller Williams Atlanta Partners, Keller Williams Sugarloaf, same agency.
Well, no, because Sugarloaf is Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners. It's
Well,
just,
so I
that's a
mean, if it's
different office.
Same broker though,
Same broker.
would that be the
But-
same?
Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners is what we put here in this office. Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners is what they put in the Sugarloaf
Oh,
office.
so they never.
That's what they put.
Oh, okay,
So
so it
now-
doesn't say that.
All of the-
Oh, okay, good, it all says Atlanta Partners.
It all says Atlanta
Oh,
Partners. But, Perimeter Road, Chattahoochee North, East Metro, there's several others that are around here that are a separate broker.
So then it's like just being a whole different.
It's like being a completely different entity, yeah. A little bit, okay? Next one, material relationship disclosure. If you have any relationship with anybody in the transaction, you wanna disclose it here, okay? And the broker wants you to err on the side of caution, you know? Seller was best friend of agent in high school, you know?
Do you really have to put that on the
Yeah.
side?
Oh,
Okay.
my.
Former business partner.
So what if you just know them from high school, but not like, I mean,
If it's the,
You have to have a
Significant-
relationship,
If
right?
it's a significant
So-
relationship.
it was significant, so let's go read. Cause as you flip back through the contract, what you guys will notice, these match up with what is on that first page. So we were in box 10, so I came back here to, paragraph 10. And let's see.
It is C, so.
Notwithstanding any provision of the contract containing a buyer seller, each hereby direct broker while acting as a dual, no, I don't want dual agency. Consent, no agency, no agency. right where it was, so. But it defines in the contract what a material, relationship is. It won't recognize it in this PDF format. Okay. So we'll come back to that. And then time limit of the offer. Okay, that this offer that we're making to buy the property, or this offer we're making to sell the property, because who can make an offer? Either
Anybody.
side. Yeah, absolutely. I'll sell you this for this. I'll buy this for this. Those are both offers. We always want to have a time limit on that offer. We don't want to leave it open-ended. Now, if I put in here, this offer set forth herein expires at 5 p.m. on Friday, when do they have to respond by?
Within that time frame.
Whenever they want to. They can only accept my offer before 5 p.m. But if they want to send me a counter offer on Monday, that's perfectly fine. And they can reference back to this agreement. We're not willing to take what you offered on Thursday, or on Wednesday last week, but if you'll change this, this, and this, we got a deal.
But in the meantime, you could have sold it to someone else.
In the meantime, I could have sold it to someone else. So
So
just
you're
understand.
only obligated up through that point, but if, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Oh, so that's for your obligations, not for the seller.
Yeah, if I make this offer, okay, they only have this amount of time to accept my offer. If they sign this and send it to me 1 minute after, we don't have a contract, okay? They can counter offer back with whatever they want to, whenever they want to.
But if in the meantime, the seller gets another offer and accepts that offer, this one is not valid?
Well, this one's never valid until the seller signs it, right? If we're the buyer sending an offer,
Right.
okay?
So if the seller doesn't respond by that time period, but accepts another offer.
It doesn't matter. Even if they don't accept another offer, and they just let this sit on their desk for 3 weeks,
But what's
it doesn't matter, it's
what's
just
the
trash.
use for that time limit? Why we put that on there?
Well, we don't want the seller coming back 6 months from now and going, oh,
I
we're
accept your
accepting your offer.
Right.
And now we have to go through the steps of, well, hopefully we have due diligence in there and we still have time to terminate the contract and
So that
Yeah.
ends it for
it ends.
us.
Yes.
So if
Boom.
they come after this time, this contract is not valid, they would have to have a counter offer, or we would have to
Or we have to
rewrite
write a
an
new
offer.
contract. That's exactly
New
right.
offer.
Now, where this becomes really, really relevant, as you guys just understood, we're thinking about it from the perspective of a buyer sending a contract to a seller, okay? But remember, very often, you're gonna write a contract as the seller and send it to the buyer, okay? They wrote an offer completely worthless, they made a whole bunch of mistakes on it, you had to go back and completely rewrite it. They maybe wrote it on an RE form instead of a GAR form, and we want it on the GAR form, so we're gonna rewrite it on the GAR form. Or we've negotiated back and forth through email, casually. They finally came to an agreement, and they said, write it up, send it to us, we'll sign it. Well, seller writes it up and sends it, okay? We've got this time limit of the offer on here. Understand, as a buyer, I can send out an offer to Terrence on his property, you on your property, Lisa on her property. All three of you accept my offer, okay? Great, I've got a due diligence with you and you. I like Terrence's house the best, so I'm gonna terminate this one, I'm gonna terminate this one, and I'm gonna move forward with Terrence's, right? Is that making sense to you guys? Okay, as a seller, how many contracts can I be in at one time? One. I've only got one house to sell. I could buy Lisa's house, Deb's house, and Terrence's house, right? How many times can I sell my house? Once. So if I send this out as an offer from the seller to the buyer, okay, and I get another offer in, okay? I just sent it to you, Lisa. Here's the offer. If you wanna buy my house, just sign this. And I just got an offer from Amy for $10,000 more than what I told you I would agree to sell it for you. Well, I take her offer.
Because
And then
don't
you
have-
sign your contract and send it back to me and says, we're in agreement.
You're in a pickle.
I'm in a pickle. I've got do I have a due diligence as a seller? No. The seller can't back out of a contract unless the buyer's in default, okay? So, what I would have to do,
on the test.
This is sounding familiar.
It's very.
okay? So, I want you guys to be aware, I send it out to Lisa, okay, and I put, and she's got till Monday to respond, and Amy sends her offer. Lisa's sitting there waiting, she's not in any hurry because she's got till Monday to decide, okay? Well, I like her offer better. There is another GAR form that's a notice to withdraw offer, okay?
Before they sign it.
Before I sign Amy's,
Or before
yes,
she
or before
signs.
she signs,
Then you
I can send over
forward
the
this-
notice to withdraw offer, and now this becomes dead instantly.
You have to sign it? Or
Huh?
dead?
So you said before,
I can withdraw my offer anytime before you accept it. Once you accept it, I can't withdraw.
Which is why DocuSign is nice too.
Yeah.
Cause she could always be like, oh, no, I've already signed it, if
Well,
it's paper, right?
in Georgia, when you press send on your computer and you're sending us an email, as soon as you press send, whether
If
she
it's an
got it,
email,
she
right.
opened it, she looked at it, does not matter. As soon as
Okay.
you hit send, that became a legal binding document right there, okay? That's been assumed to have been received. So just understand that time limit of offer was really important as a seller, because if I gave you till Monday and I got that other offer, well, if it's now Monday afternoon, well, Tuesday I can take her offer, okay? But if I wanna take her offer right now, I need to withdraw my offer with you, because we're
Before you
still
accept
within that time limit before I can accept hers, okay?
Unless they accept it before you get sent.
Yes, in which case I'm now bound in that contract.
so if you get multiple offers that you like.
Yeah.
And before your original person, signed their document, you can withdraw that person's contract? Is that what you're saying?
Alright, rephrase that. Am I the buyer or the seller?
You're the seller,
Okay,
and all of us put an offer in on your property.
fantastic. I can pick my favorite one and go with that one. What I'm talking about is if I made an offer to you.
Wouldn't it be a counter offer?
Well, potentially, okay? Understand, counter offer is an offer,
Okay.
okay? We just give it the name counter because there's a form called counter offer and modification too. But I could counter to you by writing up a whole brand new contract, okay?
Oh
But
my
even if
God.
I use that counter offer form, I still put a time limit of that offer on the counter offer, and the same rules are gonna apply. A counter offer is an offer.
Would it be, it would be just an offer if you had, where you went back and forth and it was easier for you as the listing agent or whatever to hurry up and put that together and send it
Yeah,
over?
Absolutely.
So it would be a counter, it would just be, yeah, my buyer agrees with that, that'd be great, send it over, we'll get it signed.
And again, I don't care,
I sent her a text as well.
counter offer means nothing to me, they're all offers. It's either an offer from the buyer or it's an offer from the seller, Cause, after the first one, they're all counter offers. So why is this an offer and the next 9 are all counter offers? What's the difference between any of them? Someone wants to buy something, someone wants to sell something. Alright, so make sure your buyer's initial on the bottom of the first page. And in the next 6 pages, there is nothing here. And we get back here to our exhibits and addenda. And guys, this is a place where I want you to pay really close attention. When we're doing that prep work and we're deciding what do I need to have conversation around, what needs to be part of my contract, go through this list line by line and ask yourself, is this something I need in my contract? Don't rely on your memory. 90% of the time, the exhibits you need are gonna be on this list. It's only occasionally that there's gonna be something you need that's not on this list, okay? So, all cash exhibit, your FHA loan, your conventional loan, your USDA and the VA, you're always gonna have one of those, okay? So you know you're always gonna have at least one exhibit, okay? So to make that part of your contract, check the box and give it a letter, okay? It's A, B, C. Does it matter if I've got exhibit A, B, and D and no C? That's perfectly okay, okay? And I tell you that because with the amendments you have to be numbered. And you can't have 1, 2, and 4. The order matters a whole bunch, okay? With exhibits, does it matter if the legal description comes first or the seller's property disclosure? No, it's completely interchangeable. But with amendments, I raised the price and then lowered the price. Does it matter which order those are in? Yeah. That's the reason those are numbered, because we need to know what's the order that these amendments go in. All right. So other things that are in here, backup agreement contingency. If there's a contract on a property and you want to be the backup, so if that one falls through, you immediately are under contract. As soon as that one terminates, you would use this exhibit to make that the case. And you fully negotiate the contract, you take it all the way down to both sides sign, and we can walk through that. So if you're ever wanting to do a backup offer, that's not a just send your regular offer and they hold it and they'll call you if the other one terminates. No, we negotiate a full contract, everybody signs it, that says if that one terminates, this is in place, okay? It's that exhibit that makes that happen. Closing attorney acting as holder of earnest money, we already talked about that one, that's 510, so if the attorney's holding the earnest money, we'll use that. Your community association disclosure, your seller's property disclosure, and your lead-based paint disclosure. Those three, we hopefully got before we sent it, okay? But it's gonna be very common that they're not gonna have it. They're not gonna have it ready for you, okay? So down here in special stipulations, I'm gonna mark up here, the seller's property disclosure is part of the contract. The community association disclosure is part of the contract. And I'm gonna give it an exhibit letter up here. But down here in the special stipulations, I'm gonna put seller to provide seller's property disclosure and community association disclosure within 48 hours of binding agreement date. That's perfectly okay to do, okay? So, and by you listing it up here and putting the exhibit letter, as soon as you receive it, it's now part of the contract. If you don't list it up here and you don't mark the spot, well, you've got your contract over here and you've got these other things over here that aren't tied to anything, okay? They're not part of your contract. There's no repercussions, there's no accountability to them, okay? That's only gonna apply though to your seller's property disclosure, your community association disclosure, and your decamped water disclosures. You can get those later, okay? Those are dealt with Georgia law. The lead-based paint disclosure, that is federal law. We can't get that after the contract. Federal law says you cannot have a binding agreement without that form. So when you put down here, or you see other agents say, seller to provide lead-based paint disclosure within 40 hours of binding agreement date, now we've got a catch-22. I can't have a binding agreement date until I have the lead-based paint, and you're not gonna send me lead-based paint until we have a binding agreement form. Doesn't work, okay? Get the lead-based paint disclosure, then submit the offer, okay? Other documents that are up here that you guys need to get familiar with, the condominium resale purchase and sale exhibit, take a peek at that one. You're not gonna run into that very much in our market, okay? If you're working in Buckhead and some areas, you'll run into condominiums pretty frequently. The lease purchase and lease for lease purchase. Completely disregard those. If you're ever tempted to do a lease purchase with a client, come see me first. Let's have some really serious conversation on that. That is usually not a winning proposition for the buyer or the seller. Okay? And I'll talk to you about why. Legal description exhibit. If you're marked on page 1, the legal description is attached. Well, you also mark here that it's attached, and it's attached as exhibit A, B, C. Because on the first page we said we're going to attach it. Here we're identifying how it's attached. So you have to have both. Not on the first page it doesn't say that it's exhibit A, exhibit B, exhibit C. So we know which one that it is. Loan assumptions, you're not going to have that come up in your lifetime because all mortgages now have a due on sale clause. It's kind of a throwback to olden days. Sale or lease of buyer's property contingency. That is a document you do need to get familiar with. If your client has to sell their home before they can buy a home, this is the document that needs to be attached to your contract. Okay? And we can, at a future date, talk about what does that look like. Okay? How do you fill that out? But print it out, get familiar with it. Survey rarely is going to be attached. Temporary occupancy agreement for seller after closing. We talked about that one. If the possession date is after the closing date, that's the document that we're going to use. And then for others down here, there is a document for the buyer to take possession prior to closing that I strongly, in unequivocal terms, do not recommend under any circumstances. Okay? It's out there. You will have clients ask for it. You will have, on both sides of the transaction, you will have ask or offer. It's a bad idea. Okay? That's the reason they don't put it on the list. But that may potentially be in there. You'll see some agents list the pre-qualification letter. I never do. I don't think that belongs in the contract. When you make offers for OfferPad, Zillow, and some of those companies, they have their own special addendums that they require to be part of the contract. So you come in there and you would mark open door addendum, okay, as exhibit E, and you just put exhibit E on their addendum. Okay. Then down here in the special stipulations, there are a few things that the broker loves to see you put in there. Number one is he wants you to ask for a warranty. Okay. Now the broker also understands we're in a competitive market right now, and not asking for a warranty makes it more competitive. Okay. But it's important to our buyers, so we like to ask and then negotiate it out if we need to. And the language for that I recommend that you guys use: seller to pay up to X number of dollars, $540, $600, $700 at closing toward 1 year home warranty of buyer's choosing. That way we get to pick who it is, and if we want to bump up the coverage, we got the flexibility to do that. Okay? And it puts a comfortable cap in there for the seller, so they know this is the maximum amount we're going to spend. Second thing we'd love to see you ask for is a clear termite letter. Okay? But just to say, so everybody, clear termite letter is not our preferred language. We want you to go into your documents and go to your 2020. I want you to go to the 2020 special stipulations, and I believe that it is stipulation 330 is the language we'd love for you to use.
Tricky, you asked for that, because I know on the buyer I had, we used AmeriSpec for the inspection, and Arrow did, I guess, the inspection for termites. So you're gonna also ask for the termite letter from the seller?
Yes, and I'll show you why. if we go down to 3:30, this is what I'd love for them to agree to ahead of time. Prior to closing, if we're closing on March 26th, put in prior to March 21st. We're gonna pick a day, 3 days or 5 days prior to the closing, okay? Seller shall provide buyer with an official Georgia wood infestation report, what we call a termite letter in the industry. But is a termite letter just about termites? No, there's 5 other wood-borne organisms that they're also inspecting for. From a licensed Georgia pest control operator dated subsequent to the binding agreement date, which covers all dwellings and garages located on the property. Here's the thing that's different. In the event the report reveals any active infestations from termites or other wood-destroying organisms listed in the report, seller agrees to have the termite company issuing the report treat the infestation in accordance with the standards set by the Georgia Department of Agriculture.
So the seller is paying for treating it.
They're gonna get the letter, and if there's an issue, then they're gonna treat it. If I can get them to agree to that up front, it's better than me having the inspection done, us uncovering something, and then me asking, okay? Because that's one more thing that I'm asking for in the amendment to address concerns. If they've agreed for it here, well, now when I get my inspection report, it's not on the list of things I want fixed over here. If I've got one more thing on my list over here, maybe there's one less thing that they're gonna agree to do for my client. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that, so I guess
Is there anything wrong with the way you're doing it? No. Keep doing it the way you want to. It's a personal choice in how you run your business.
protection right
Mhm.
here.
Yes.
So, from their spend, I didn't know, because this was my first fire, but they automatically had the arrow come
Yep.
to check.
Which is fantastic.
Right, so that's in our cost of the inspection. We just still,
You still
I mean-
ask you're still gonna ask them?
you're gonna still ask for this, but then we know that,
Yeah,
they were
they were honest.
having them come
You
also.
can double check. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that at all. Okay. The other two things, there's a lot of debate over the broker wants you to ask for a survey, but understands that by far the majority of properties nowadays don't have a survey. But the reason he tells you that is he wants to make sure you're having a conversation with your clients that that's not something they need or they want, okay? The survey. And if it is important to them, then we do need to include it, because it's not really mentioned anyplace else in the offer, except for that one little line, survey is attached. Well, back years ago, every transaction had to have a survey. Well, that's no longer the case. That's not the rule. But there are people that are thinking, I'm gonna get a survey when I buy the property. We wanna make sure they're fully aware that if we want a survey, somebody's gonna have to pay for the survey, and that's not the norm. So we have to, are they gonna pay for it, or are they gonna ask the seller to pay for it? If the seller pays for it, that is a detractor from the strength of their offer, okay?
So if the buyer wants one, he needs to.
He needs to plan to get one himself
Decide to do it
afterwards, yeah. That's the ideal situation. We just wanna make sure you guys are having that conversation.
And you can go down to the courthouse and get a plat.
Yeah, you can get a
For a
plan,
couple
just figure out the
Yeah.
basic way.
Okay, so I'm just thinking in terms of if you're buying or selling land, you would want the survey, but you can go get that plat and then it's gonna show you.
Well, potentially, I'm buying 200 acres and I'm gonna go train my hunting dogs on it. Do I need a survey? I'm not building on it, I'm
Just
not,
the plat would be
Just
sufficient,
the plat
if you
would
wanna
probably-
know your
Shows the
boundaries.
if I just want, if I just want to know the general idea where it is, but if I'm trying to figure out where are my setbacks to do construction, where can I put my fence in the backyard, I probably want a survey, cause I don't wanna build my fence for $2,000 and put it 6 inches in my neighbor's yard and have to have it taken down in 6 months, okay? So, there is a time for it.
We would. go
Guys,
next
in
week.
special situations is also a perfect place to ask for any repairs that you know of before the offer that are gonna keep your client from going forward. Okay? So this is not where the little nitpicky, you know, the paint's a little bit grungy, can we touch up here, or the
Fixing the air
aesthetics.
conditioning or something.
Yes, the AC is not working or needs to be replaced, or the roof needs to be replaced, or appliances need to be installed. Okay, if they're big ticket items that if this doesn't get done, we're not buying the property. Take care of that here if we know that issue, okay? Because if you don't, because you will hear agents say, well, I take care of all the repairs after the inspection. Well, guess what your client had to do? Pay for the inspection. If you knew that they weren't gonna move forward unless this was done, why not ask for it now? Because the seller may have no intention of ever doing that, and you just wasted $500 of your client's money on an inspection. Okay? But don't ask for the trivial stuff. Okay? Then, signature page, okay? On the signature page, just put your client's name, don't put their information, okay? There is no reason for the party on the other side, the agent or the buyer or seller on the other side of the transaction, to ever contact your client. It doesn't need to be in the contract at all. That's information that's not necessary for them to know. So don't put it on.
Populate on there, if you do it through the forms, like you did on the first.
It some of it will auto-populate, but go through and just delete it off. Yep. But what we do have to have is all of your information. Because anybody in there needs to have it. Now for your client, I tell you their information doesn't belong on the contract, it does belong on the brokerage agreement, okay?
Because it did populate all, and it would do.
Yeah. So your buyer's brokerage agreement and your listing agreements, we as the broker, we're the only ones that see it, your client and us, okay? Well, if something happens to you, they're still our client, and we have to be able to know how to reach them and take care of them, right? So we want it on our brokerage agreements, but not on our contract. Alright? How'd we do today, guys? Do we feel like we can make it through at least the purchase and sale agreement?
Once we have, we do an
Now, there's still all the amendments that we have to learn, and we'll come through, and we'll come back at a future date, and we'll talk about, you know, the FHA loan exhibit, the seller lease of buyer's contingency. But I wanted you guys not just to know what goes in the blank, but what does my thinking need to be as I go to build my contract? Okay? Good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys. Have an
you.
awesome day.
You too.
And if y'all need to revisit this, it's going to be